Hello, BookTube. All right, we're back on our library tour here. It's a gray and rainy day here in Boston. Very humid, no hint of sunlight. A perfect day to to curl up and read. But I wanted to continue with our library tour. We are doing the books in the fireplace. There's an old bricked up fireplace here. We did the mantelpiece. And then we're going to do, these are double stacked, so we're going to do all of the books that are outside first on each shelf, and then we'll go and do the books that are actually on shelves the way they should be. I'm not at all averse to little knickknacks on bookshelves, on the little extra lip of space of a bookshelf that's outside of a book, but whole other stacks of books on that lip is bad. That is when you know that your books are a little bit out of control, and mine are. I need far fewer books. But I wanted to issue a little trigger warning. Those of you who had mild or medium or grand mal levels of conniption fits over my little in the round tour of the little book room, because of the fact that most of the books in there aren't organized in any way, you might want to retreat to your safe spaces for this shelf and probably all of these shelves, because there's no rhyme or reason to any of these books except in tiny little stretches that probably won't do your anal retentive hearts any good. So I just a fair warning. Let's see here. We're now at the books. We did the stacked out books for this top shelf yesterday. So now we're at the books proper. And the first one is a debut, and it was really good. I really enjoyed it. This is Scott Van Doviak. This is Charlesgate Confidential. This is part of the Hard Case Crime series. This came out in a paperback, I believe. Was this a paperback originally? I don't know. Well, I think it was. But anyway, this is doubly fascinating for me. Of course, it takes place in Boston, and it's a sort of historical what-if story. What if the Isabella Stewart Gardner Art Museum theft that happened in Boston in 1990, in which priceless works of art were stolen and will never be recovered. Their frames sit empty in the museum. A fascinating story that took place then. This book posits the hypothetical that crime took place in 1946, and has had all this time to grow and accumulate leads and dead leads and suspects and dead suspects and whatnot. And originally I thought, when I first heard of this book, I thought, well, what about just a historical novel about the Gardner heist? Why do you need to add the extra complication of putting it back in the past? But this author does a great job. I thought this was just fantastic. So I recommend it to fans of hard-boiled detective fiction, not even people who know anything about the Gardner heist. Okay, then we have the movie version of Call Me By Your Name, Andre Aciman's rather insufferable gay novel that, I mean, you have almost certainly seen the movie. Probably a lot of you have read the book. Maybe some of you are fans of this author. I have been intermittently a fan of him when he's not wallowing in bathos. I think he can be quite talented. The fact that his next book is a direct sequel to this book, and that the sequel was driven by the success of the movie rather than by anything coming from inside the author, speaks very poorly of whether or not that book has any chance of rising above wallow-ready bathos. But if you've read the book, I mean, or seen the movie, what possible inference can you draw from this other than, I don't even know, that beautiful straight boys really should stick to their own kind? That beautiful gay men are always going to let them down? That I don't know. I have read this twice. I read it when it first came out, and I read it when I got this edition, and I still don't understand what the larger point is that the author is driving at. Maybe he isn't. Maybe that's what I'm missing. But I liked parts of it enough to keep it. Plus, I had, I didn't keep the original that I got, but I'm keeping the movie cover version. All right. This next one is fantastic. This is by Janet Wertman. This is The Path to Somerset. And this is about the Seymour family. The first book was Jane the Queen, about Jane Seymour, and this is about her brothers. I think it's going to be a trilogy. Yeah, book 2 of the Seymour saga. So I don't know if it's going to be a trilogy, but I can guess what the next book will be, because you want to go through Jane Seymour and then both brothers. And this is just terrific. It's a perfect example of what I often talk about on this channel, about how really good self-published stuff happens, or self-published or indie published stuff happens that we don't know about. and that we would want to know about if we could. That's the one thing you take on the chin if you do indie publishing route. You get all your own royalties. You get to make your own decisions about everything, from page layout to cover design to everything else. You are in control of everything, and that's great. The one thing that traditional publishing gives you sometimes that you don't get is distribution. Word of mouth is getting your thing out there so that people know about it, so that your target audience knows about it. There are packages that you can sign up for online that will help you if you're an indie author to get that done. I say examine them, rate them, watch YouTube videos on them, and then do one. Sink the money into it, because that's the only thing you're missing. The only thing that stopped this from being really, really popular with all of the millions of fans of Wolf Hall, for instance, it's the exact same subject matter, exact same characters, different perspective, different kind of writing. The only thing that stopped this from that was that those people didn't know it existed, which is pretty bad. That's a pretty dumb reason for a book not to hit a million sales. But I recommend it. I strongly recommend it. I'm eagerly waiting the next book in the series. Oh, okay, all right, great. These are Apolo trade paperbacks, and they are gorgeous, just gorgeous. Look at how beautiful this is. This is The Man Who Loved Children by Christina Stead, which is this is a Norman Rockwell painting, a famous Norman Rockwell painting that we only get one. It was a diptych. A diptych. The original Norman Rockwell painting had a family, like a normal middle-class suburban family. You know, you've got the children, you've got the breadwinner, you've got the wife, you've got the kids, you've got the dog, and they're all headed off for vacation, and they're as eager as could be. And then the second panel of this painting sequence is them all coming back, and they're exhausted and haggard and tired from arguing, except for Granny. Granny is the soul of rectitude either way, but other than that, it's a funny painting sequence, and I think it was just chosen for this volume because it has children in it, and the word children is in the title of the book. But I love the book, I love the author, and I love this edition. So, and I believe that edition was sent to me by Adam at Memento Mori. So I guess by extension I have to love him too. And this is also Christina Stead. This is Letty Fox, Her Luck, with a famous play on words in the title. If you're of a certain age or a certain mind frame or a certain guttery turn of mind, you'll get it right away. But this is also tremendous. I don't know if Apolo has done all the rest of Christina Stead. I would like that if that were true. I never even bothered to check. I should. Actually, I should look on Book Depository and see if there are more of these beautiful editions, because I would take them all if they exist. I don't know if you can search. Can you search Book Depository for Apolo trade paperback editions? I don't know if you can. I'd take them all if they're this beautiful. What's the next? Oh, okay. All right. The next one is, again, those of you who are looking for rhyme or reason, those of you who are looking for thematic order, I'm afraid you're out of luck. You're just totally out of luck. It's just not the way I organize. Most of my books I don't organize. And this is the famous humanitarian Albert Schweitzer. Perhaps you've heard of the famous humanitarian Albert Schweitzer, and you're probably wondering, what enormous and ponderous work of his am I going to show you? I am not going to show you an enormous and ponderous work. I'm going to show you his 100-page account of adopting a pelican. The story of my pelican. That's what this is. And it's charming. It's far more bearable than anything else that I've ever read by Albert Schweitzer. Okay, all right, this is BBC. BBC Television did a great series of Shakespeare adaptations, in my opinion the best complete Shakespeare adaptations ever put on film, even though there were some noticeable duds, including Anthony Hopkins as Othello in blackface. but by far 98% of their productions of Shakespeare were done by battle-hardened veterans of the RSC, and they are fantastic, just fantastic. And they also came out with a companion set of play scripts with color photographs from those productions, and this is the one for Measure for Measure. And I got this. This one, it was signed to me by a young man who was starring in a production of Measure for Measure. But so that's why I have this one as opposed to any other. But this has. Let me show you. This has black and white headshots of the cast, and also color photos from the movie, from the BBC production. I strongly recommend those productions. Oh my, are they good. And I don't know if I would ever see another one of them. It's just here as a random miscellany. That's all. All my shelves are miscellaneous shelves. Okay, next we have, I think this is an English language translation. Yeah, this is an English language translation of a very popular Venice guidebook, Venice and its Lagoon, it's loaded with black and white, grainy black and white photos and reproductions of artwork and tons of minute descriptions, street by street, block by block. I don't have any idea why I have this. I really don't. I mean, it's a kind of a familiar refrain in these bookshelf tours, but I don't know why I have this. Yes, I loved my time in Venice. I absolutely love reading about Venice, but about Venice, not guidebooks. I'm never going back to Venice. I'm never going to stand on any of these streets anymore. I'm never going to stand outside my old building again. So why I have a guidebook, I don't know. Well, I'll deal with it. So this is what, like I mentioned yesterday, one of the benefits of these shelf tours is that they're really helping me to look at what I want to keep and what I don't want to keep. And that's very good. That's very helpful. Okay, this next one is Jaron Lanier, and it is 10 arguments for deleting your social media accounts right now. And it's by one of the architects of the modern internet, and he goes through his reasoning. Some of it is more wonky than others. There's a great deal of common sense here about the harm that social media accounts do. It's of course hypocritical, because he might deny it until the sun goes down, but he has social media accounts of his own. And it's also fallacious. A lot of the arguments for deleting your social media accounts here are not really that. They are not really arguments for deleting your social media account. They're arguments for controlling your social media accounts. Now, Jaron Lanier would say otherwise. He said if you participate, then you are being used and siphoned for information, which is all your social media accounts want. They don't want to put you in touch with old high school friends. They want to siphon every last bit of information, marketable information, out of you. And if you participate in any way, you are helping them to do that. That's what he would say. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I think there are ordinary common sense precautions that you can take, and also common sense wider view perspectives that you can adopt towards the whole world of social media. I think, in other words, I may be in the drastic minority here, but certainly I have reviewed books in the last 2 years by authors, many of them, who said that this is not true, that what I'm about to say is not true. But nevertheless, I firmly believe that social media can be used responsibly. It just takes self-control. And millennials, especially zillennials, simply don't want to hear that word. They just don't want to hear it. They ban it, in other words. Burn it. Destroy it. Put it down the memory hole. Kill or to completely disenfranchise its architects, but don't ask me to control myself. So I guess it's maybe I'm oh, okay. All right. We've seen this book before on this channel. This is What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera. This is a gay teen coming-of-age, meet-cute, love in the city novel that I had high hopes for. Both of these authors have at one point or other pleased me in one way or another. I thought this was such a relentlessly dumb book. Just relentlessly shallow, one-dimensional, and dumb. Even in its emotional scenes, the alleged emotional scenes in the third act when you're supposed to be getting all sorts of payoff. No, none of it. It was all telegraphed. It was all manipulative and shallow. I just didn't like it at all. And the reason that it's on this shelf, despite such a clear judgment, I mean, I wasn't in a gray area about this book at all, is because once it came out, I saw what a devoted following it was gathering. And it's going to be a hugely successful movie, just like Love, Simon was. It's going to be the exact same kind of thing. 2 40-year-old tobacco addicts will be hauled in to play 18-year-olds, and they will fall in love by showing no emotion on camera and displaying no acting ability whatsoever, and being boorish a-holes during their press tours. So it'll be the exact same thing as Love, Simon. And Love, Simon was a huge hit in the gay community. So you tell me, what am I supposed to make of this? I told myself, wait until it comes out in paperback and then reread it. Give it another try. And I guess I'm holding on to the hardcover until I get the paperback and can try that. But you tell me what the larger lesson is here. Same thing with Call Me By Your Name. What am I supposed to make of this? In the 21st century, am I supposed to say that the gays are so desperate to see themselves represented in any kind of artistic media that they'll take crap like this and cheer for it like seals at the aquarium? Or am I supposed to say that the gays just love reading about themselves regardless of whether or not it's any good? I don't know. As usual, the gays confuse me. But I'm holding onto the book just in case. We'll see if it gets any better. If it's any consolation to you, they've always confused me. So it isn't just the advent of YA that did it. Still, you can't live without them, can you? Anyway, okay, all right. This next one is the lovely Penguin paperback of 84 Charing Cross Road. The epistolary story of a woman in America falling into a long distance letter relationship with the manager at a bookstore in England, and their relationship deepens and their worlds broaden, both of them, and it's wonderful, just wonderful. I mean, people knew that it was wonderful from the minute that it appeared, and it has been stage plays, it has been movies, it is immortal, and people knew that the minute it appeared. People were saying, "Oh, this is elementally perfect," and I couldn't disagree. Okay, all right, this next one is, oh God, is this more gay fiction? I think it is. I think this is more gay fiction. This is by Daniel Arsand, and it is Lovers from Europa Editions. Sebastian is 15 years old and already versed in the medicinal properties of plants and herbs when he meets the young nobleman Balthazar de Crillon, whose life he saves after the latter is thrown from a horse. Struck by the boy's beauty as much as by his talents as a healer, de Crillon orders Sebastian to his manor some months later so he can instruct him in the ways of court, hoping thus to install him in Louis XV's surgeon. But his motives are clouded by his lust for Sebastian, and after a brief period of restraint, Sebastian and Balthazar loose both their passion and their imagination in the heady year of our Lord 1749. So, I read it and liked it. I don't know what it's doing here. I only liked it. I didn't like it enough to keep it, so I don't know why it's here, but that's all right. I promised myself that I wouldn't say that after every book like I did last time. This next one is a Venice book. This is by Tiziano Scarpa, and it is Venice is a Fish. And it is called A Sensual Guide. It's just a little thing. And I really liked it. I think I reviewed it. And it's a very good Venice book, and so is this next one, Watermark by Joseph Brodsky. Another very thin thing. Another really good Venice book. I think there are probably a few Venice books scattered around these bookshelves, and I can already hear the bat squeal protestations. Well, if there are, then why aren't they all together? I know. I'm frustrated too. Okay, all right. This next one is not a Venice book. This is Jaws by Peter Benchley. I had a hardcover of this when it first came out. I read it and thought, boy, that doesn't do any favors for sharks, now does it? But I thought it was kind of effective. When I first read it, when it first came out, it had a completely different cover. It didn't have this iconic movie poster. And when I first read it, I was struck by the plot line of marital infidelity. I thought it was done with a fair amount of adult intelligence. Honestly, when I first read the book, I thought the shark stuff was kind of a background metaphor. Good luck trying to spin that reading now. So a little while later, the movie came out, and that was all she wrote. And, I mean, when the movie came out, the mass market paperback with this iconic, one of the most iconic movie posters of all time. And when the movie came out, the mass market paperback was issued with this cover, the movie cover. And I got it. And I read it until it fell apart, and gave it away to a lot of people, bought it a few more times. And the whole time that I was doing that, I kept thinking, boy, it'd be nice if there was a hardcover with this classic cover. And it took, this is a Book of the Month Club special edition, and it took them to do it. They finally did it. So now I have it, and I enjoy it. I enjoy rereading Shaw's. I don't feel that way about any other Peter Benchley novel, even though I acknowledge that some of his other novels are probably technically better. I still like this one more than any of the others. I don't know why that is. It was the first book of his that I read, so maybe that was it. Okay, all right, this is a lovely trade paperback of Letters to Alice on First Reading Jane Austen by Faye Weldon, an author I don't usually like, but this is utterly charming and completely bookish. Just completely bookish, in a way that I really, really liked. And I have had hardcovers and mass market foreign paperbacks and whatnot. I love to give it to people, especially people who want a book about books that they maybe haven't read. The people who have read 84 Charing Cross Road and maybe want something magical along those lines, but not that book. letters to Alice is a good thing to give them. They're going to love it, even if they don't like Fay Weldon. I know that for a fact. Oh, okay, all right, here's another Venice book. Great. How old is this thing? Oh, God, this has to be 100 years old. This is Frances Marion Crawford's Salve Venetia. And it's, I think this was, I don't see it in the book, but I think this was 1905 or 1906, something like that. And it's a lovely thing, very heavy in the hand, has black and white spot illustrations all throughout, and also protected by onion skin, more detailed illustrations. And I think, I won't drag you through here, but I think it also has photographs. So I think some of these black and white things that are protected by onion skin are photographs. But I could be wrong about that. This is not the only old Venice guidebook that I have. And this is not a guidebook. This is Crawford does just horrible. Some of you remember Anthony Trollope's novel, The Way We Live Now, there's a character there who is trying to hack author who's writing horrible books and trying to make a scratch out a meager living doing that. And the book that we meet her writing when the book starts is Criminal Queens, and Trollope never tells us outright how horrible a book it is, but he leads us in the first few chapters to know without any doubt that it is in fact an absolutely horrible bowdlerizing of history. This is kind of sort of the same. This is the stories from Venice's history that Crawford recounts in this book don't bear much relationship to the same stories recounted by, for instance, Gore Vidal in his book Vidal on Venice. Okay, this next one is also a Venice book. And this is nonfiction. This is also from Europa Editions, and I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. This is by Alessandro Marzo Magno, and it is Bound in Venice, which sounds like the title of an even better book. but when I get around to writing my memoirs. but this is about the booming book trade in Venice throughout the centuries, from the half century before the popularization of the printing press straight through. I mean, Aldus Manutius was in Venice. Venice was at the epicenter of the revolution in print, and authors came from all over to work there and stayed that way for a long time, for centuries. So, and this book does justice to it, about as much justice as you can do in such a small amount of pages. Okay, this next one is by Brian Phillips. This is the trade paperback of his essay collection, Impossible Owls. Two of the pieces in here I really liked, and all the rest, it was meh. So what it's doing here, I have no idea. I liked two pieces in it. It was definitely enough to make me want to watch for this author's work. But to keep the book, I don't know that it was worth it. Oh, great. Okay, this is the beautiful National Trust paperback. The National Trust in England put out a paperback series of books about stately homes. Not what Quentin Quist referred to as stately homos of England, but stately homes of England. And this is their reprint of a classic along those lines, Knole and the Sackvilles by Vita Sackville West. This is just terrific. And look at how pretty it is. This is it's a very pretty trade paperback edition of her book about the sprawling home of her ancestors. That has been dinged, Knole and the Sackville has been dinged a bit on its factual and historic accuracy, but who cares? That wasn't what she was trying to do, I don't think. And it sweeps you away. If you ever see Knole and the Sackvilles, at a yard sale or something like that, give it a try. I think you will really, really like it. This copy has whole pages that are underlined, because when Vita Sackville West wanted to, which, to be fair, she didn't often, but when she wanted to write great prose, she could write prose as great as anybody from her era, all of whose names we know except hers. She could outright or equally write all of them when she wanted to. It's just the key was she didn't often want to, which is the dividing line. That's the scrimmage line. I won't go into an author tube rant here, but that is the scrimmage line between writers who are mortal and writers who are not. When you go to your typewriter down in your workroom or up in your attic, can you make work? Or do you have to sit there and wait to be visited? But this next one, talk about making work. Talk about going to a typewriter and just doing it. This is the great Frank O'Connor. This is a collection of short stories of his, an old vintage trade paperback that I have had forever. I have reinforced this a million times. It creaks because the pages are old anyway, despite reinforcement. He is a fantastic short story writer, just fantastic. What I wouldn't give to find either a hardcover in this with the old Irish bar on the cover with a dust jacket, or or for somebody to come out with an enormous, I mean, twice this size of his short stories, with maybe a new introduction by some notable Irish blowhard, that puts him back in the public eye. What I wouldn't give, what I wouldn't give. But as it is, it doesn't belong here. It belongs in the little book room, because I go back to these short stories often, and nothing that's out here in this room should be a revisited book. All of the frequently revisited books should be in my permanent collection. So again, this book tour is helping quite a bit. Okay, all right. This is also from the early 19th century, I believe. I'm not seeing it, but this would be from the 19-teens, something like that. And this is Cape Coddities by Dennis and Marion Chatham. And it's just a little book of Cape Cod lore. So Coddity and Oddity here are made to do double duty. Those of you who are not from America maybe might not be familiar. Cape Cod is the hook of Massachusetts. If you call up a Google image search of Massachusetts, you will see that it is a long rectangular state, and that it has a beautifully sheltered harbor, and that the main thing that shelters the harbor is the hook of the state that goes out into the ocean. And that hook, that spit, that curved hook of land is Cape Cod. And I know every inch of it, every tree, every cove, every rock, every person, every house. I've been there. I've spent so much time on Cape Cod and the islands, Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, one is just offshore, one is further out. And this is just a century-old collection of Cape Cod lore and stories from various different places. You know, bear sightings, ghosts, that sort of thing. The sort of thing you would get in any small town community, but the Cape always had it was particularly fertile for that kind of stuff. Oh, okay, great. All right. This next batch are they're not all together, but this is some of the Penguin reprints that I've been telling you about. They're not actually reprints. They're new translations of Georges Simenon. And these are absolutely beautiful things. Whoever is part of the art department here to make these things really earned their keep. Well, they're doing everything. This is the man who watched the trains go by. This is not. This is an actual novel. It probably took him a day instead of 4 hours. And the same thing with this. The snow was dirty. They did those too. But I have a lot of these. My soft spot, of course, and so everybody else's is Maigret. Maigret Enjoys Himself, for instance, is a great, just terrifically enjoyable novel where Maigret decides to stay on vacation, even though a murder has happened in Paris on the first day of his vacation. And he vows to his doctor and to his long-suffering wife that he will not go back to the office. He will not stop in, because then he'll just be working the murder. He knows he will be. So he decides instead to follow the case purely in the newspaper, purely as a civilian, without any insider police knowledge. He tries to follow the case from the newspapers, and is so good at ferreting out, inconsistencies and missing pieces of information that are very vital, that he starts to be well ahead of the police just by the virtue of the stuff that they have released through their press office, and starts sending them anonymous letters. Has anyone questioned so-and-so? Has anyone gone such and such a place? And it's very, very good. He sends them anonymous letters with those prods, and he watches the case unfold in the papers, and then he gets a note at home. At the end of it all, he gets a note at home from one of his top lieutenants saying, "Thanks for the help, Chief. Have a good vacation," because they knew all along that it was him and that he couldn't rest. But I have a few of these things. There've been a lot. He wrote 80 Maigret novels, 90, 100, 120. So there've been a lot of them, and I have almost all of them scattered throughout this place somewhere. Because I get them all. I've been getting them all from Penguin. I'm very happy to do so. We're almost done here. Don't worry. It's a long video. These are always... okay. This is Moshe Sackvilles. This is The Diamond Setter. This is about a mild-mannered man whose life is upended by a refugee who comes to... Well, what have we got here? The uneventful life of a jeweler from Tel Aviv changes abruptly after Farid, a handsome young man from Damascus, crosses illegally into Israel and makes his way to the ancient port city of Jaffa in search of his roots. In his pocket is a piece of a famous blue diamond. Intending to return the diamond to its rightful owner, Farid is soon swept up in Tel Aviv's vibrant gay scene and a turbulent protest movement. And I thought there were aspects of this that were much stronger than other aspects. Once again, I thought that the gay aspects were a little bit embarrassing. They were. You could almost hear the calculations on the part of the author saying, well, all I have to do is show up for these parts, and the gays will go crazy because they're still acting like marginalized readers. And so I don't really have to do right by them. I just have to show them something. That's all, and then I can move on. And I think it shows in the book because the social life and the protests and all of that is much better done than it's noticeably less. It's noticeably weaker. The gay substrand in this novel is noticeably weaker than all the rest of it. But I liked it. I liked it enough to keep it, definitely. When I was last in Jaffa, there was no vibrant gay scene. And if there was a vibrant subterranean gay scene with code words and basement rooms, nobody bothered to tell me. A weird stranger with flyaway hair and 1 million dogs, nobody bothered to tell me. Okay, all right, this next is by a wonderful author named Dennis Donahue. And this is Words Alone. This is his study of T.S. Eliot. And I found this, for $1 at the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston, right at the time when I was considering rereading Eliot's poetry and understanding him a little better. I found this and a few other books, and I also got sent from his publisher new trade paperbacks of the complete poetry. So I have been gradually dipping my toe in all of that. I think later in the year I'll probably make a concerted effort on T.S. Eliot and just do that. I'm kind of, in a way, waiting for the last shoe to drop. I'm kind of expecting that aside from the reprints of Eliot's poetry, there will be a new book about Eliot that I will get, and that will be like the final reminder, the final gong saying, go ahead and do this. And that hasn't happened yet. I don't think there's a T.S. Eliot biography planned for this year. Or I would have known about it by now, I think. But anyway, we're down to the last book here, and this is Noble Essences by Osbert Sitwell, the noted pretentiosaurus Osbert Sitwell, and this is just brief profiles of people that he thinks he knows or that he has clever things to say about, like Wilfred Owen. They're not nearly as good as he thinks they are, but I grabbed this anyway as a placeholder because they are interesting. His profiles are interesting, and I would like to have them. I'd like to have this book. This, I think, was the final volume in his multi-part gaseous anomaly memoir, and this is the only one I want. And I got this book, again, really cheap at the Brattle, just as a placeholder. To remind me to get a good version of it if I find one. But that's not a good idea, right? Because I didn't need that reminder. I already know I want the book, and I'm never going to read a thing that's as cheaply made as this. It wouldn't survive for 5 minutes. So it's vulnerable. Anyway, that is our next shelf. So next time we move on, we will do transverse books again, because the next shelf down is double stacked and buried in transverse books. So we'll do those next, and then we'll move on and see what other miscellaneous horrors await us. Thank you, BookTube.